sort of like exam and exam sort of strategy, how I'd go about with your shaping a strategy in terms of practice exams. But essentially, the ultimate form of exam preparation is practice questions and practice exams. So when you do a practice exam, it's really important that you complete an exam without notes. I feel like the first one or the first two ones that you complete, I think it's okay to have your notes with you. However, the next ones that you do have, you should complete them without notes. But definitely you should be doing more practice exams without notes than with notes. Initially, you can refer to them a little bit. However, it's important that you are actually revising the content beforehand, before you do your practice exams. It's also important that you yourself go in and mark your answers, because if you're rereading your questions, it allows you to critically think about your answer. And that skill is so important when you're in SACs and exams, because when you're able to critically think, you're able to be like, oh, I didn't explain this. I didn't include the how part of this link. And so then you're able to then go in and add to your answer, so that you're able to then get the mark. But yeah, mark your answer, and then you can get your teacher/tutor to mark them, and to then give you a little bit of feedback as well. And then the third step is determine which questions and areas you struggle the most in, and then you can actually use that as like a guide in terms of how you want to revise and what you need to revise for the exam or your SAC. And then you can reattempt the question. When I would actually do my practice exams, I would read through all the questions and I would complete them. But I would actually, if there was a question that I was really struggling with, I would actually highlight it so that I knew that I need to revise that particular content. And even once I completed the answer, I would then reattempt the question so that I felt a lot more confident and to tackle that question and sort of with the content as well. So the main question, how many practice exams should you do? The answer is as many as you can. So there's no like limit in terms of how many you should do, but you should really be aiming for as much as you can. But it's also important to remember that it should be quality over quantity. So there's no point sort of crushing out like 5 practice exams in a row, because it's likely that you've made the same mistake in all of those practice exams. Rather, complete a practice exam, like have a read through it, mark it yourself, give it to a teacher, ask them what they think, give them an opportunity to give you feedback, and then use that feedback to maybe rewrite specific questions. Just because through that, where you went wrong, you've actually practiced implementing that feedback. And then you can then maybe give it back to your teacher to have a read of your new and improved answer. And then she can be like, oh, this was good. Or be like, hey, maybe, you could have done this. You could have focused on this part of my feedback a little bit more. But I think getting feedback from your teacher and rewriting answers is a really good way of ensuring that you're not making the same mistake the next time you complete a practice exam. But the recommendation is at least 10 practice exams, with 5 or so at least under like strict timing and exam conditions. Practice exams, and I think just doing practice questions in general, are really your best form of study. Practice exams are good because it allows you to think under pressure and under those time conditions, which is a very important thing to do in your SAC and your exam. So it's really important that you're able to smash out all those questions, and also have time to edit and reread your answers too. There's no set number, but again, you should be aiming to do practice exams until you're confident in your knowledge and have a few specific areas to improve in. Okay, how to ace BizMan. So it's really important that you have a system for notes. So have stuff working to your own advantage and manage it in a way that helps you. I think everyone has a different way of organizing their notes. So don't just do what your friend's doing, do what works for you. And maybe you start off the year taking notes on your laptop, but then you realize maybe it's more effective for me to handwrite notes, and that's completely okay, because you're doing something, you're figuring out what's working for you. But in my case, my main notes were through a set of quiz cards, and I had another notebook for questions and answers. So in class, whenever I would have a question, I'd write it in that notebook just so that I would remember to ask my teacher and follow up on that. And I would also write my notes by hand because I think that was like the best way for me to really understand what I was writing and thinking. It's also important to be on the good side of your teacher because they are ultimately the ones who are marking your things. And sometimes, and if you're lucky, they might even give you some sack hints. So that's why you always want to be on the good side of your teacher. And also get on top of your definitions early. I feel like definitions are really important. So do really try to, I guess, get a start on them early in terms of, understanding them and memorizing them. Ask every question you have. Any unasked question is potentially throwing exam marks. I know that, whenever there was a question that I did not ask and it would come up in the exam, I would really kick myself for it because I was like, if I just asked this question to my teacher, I would have gotten the answer. I would have known what to do in the situation, and therefore I'm not jeopardizing myself in terms of like losing marks. So literally any question you have, ask your teacher, ask your tutor, because that's what they're there for. So really make sure you, I guess, take advantage and capitalize on that. Use your own work experience to your advantage or make it up. So especially if you do have a job, I feel like a lot of these things that we learn in BizMan, you can kind of reflect and think about how it applies to your own life. So definitely use your own experience as a basis in terms of giving examples. And even if you don't have a job, that's so fine. You can also make it up. I did not have a job in year 12, so I would always make my examples up. But that kind of links to the idea of always include examples into your answers as well. Okay, so again, a bit of a mark the answer question, but discuss partnerships as the type of business. This is 4 marks. One advantage is that partnerships are easy to set up. Another advantage is that they offer great access to capital to set up. However, one disadvantage of a partnership is that it has unlimited liability, and then the disadvantage is that partnerships lack perpetuity. How many marks out of 4 should this answer receive? Probably 1 out of 0 if your examiner is in a bad mood. And why is that? Because I feel like they've just kind of listed the advantages and disadvantages. They haven't really elaborated on their responses. So this is probably something that the student could do to sort of uplift and increase the quality of their response. So for example, just saying one advantage is that partnerships are easy to set up, ensuring higher time efficiency. The second one, in terms of how it offers greater access to capital because multiple owners are contributing to their finances. So just going that step further so that it kind of links to the how and the why, rather than just being like partnerships are easy to set up, partnerships have greater access to capital. That's not enough detail for a discuss question. For the disadvantage, they've gone on to then talk about unlimited liability. So unlimited liability is when owners and businesses are considered separate legal entities, and therefore, business asset, both personal and business assets can be seized to pay off the debt. Another disadvantage is that partnerships lack perpetuity, and that refers to the ability of a business to survive in the long term because they can easily dissolve if partners no longer wish to work together. Another really important thing with BizMan is handwriting. So if your handwriting is bad, it's really important that you fix it now, because if your teacher or the examiner cannot read your handwriting, they cannot understand what you're saying, you're going to get 0 because they're not able to understand and read what you're saying. It's also really important that you answer your questions fully. So whenever I write a question, whenever I answered a question, I would always reread the question, then reread my response and be like, okay, have I actually answered the question fully? If I hadn't, then, add in a bit to your answer to make sure that you're answering all parts of the question. Also really important that you highlight the task words. The task words are really important in terms of for you to understand what you need to include in the answer. So if it's an evaluate question, to include advantages, disadvantages, and your final opinion. If it's a discuss, you're just looking at advantages and disadvantages. If it's a compare, you're looking at similarities and differences. If it's a distinguish, you're looking at differences. So it's really important that you're familiar with your task words and always highlighting your task words in your question. All right, so that brings us to the end of our lecture today. Um, Let me have a look and see if there's anything else. Yeah, I reckon if you have any other questions, like, do let me know. Type it into the chat, and I will be like actively on the document. But yeah, hopefully everything made sense and it was very helpful. But yeah, hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the year and, enjoys, BizMan and goes well with all of their sacks and the exam.